For as long as I could remember, my three closest friends and I had dreamed of an epic week-long adventure along the west coast of Scotland, rock climbing, outdoor thrills, and total freedom. It was all we ever talked about. But for the past 3 years, life had other plans. Responsibilities piled up, family obligations took priority, and most notably our wives dismissed the idea as nothing more than a childish fantasy. Now in our 30s, we had run out of excuses. Sitting in the pub, drinks in hand, we reflected on how much had changed since getting married. Back when we first started dating, our girlfriends admired our tight-knit bond and shared interests. But over time, those very passions became obstacles. Little by little, our hobbies disappeared: soccer, mountain biking, kayaking, and of course, rock climbing. Fueled by liquid courage, we reached a sobering conclusion. Our wives had become relentless nags, taking pride in controlling every aspect of our lives. There was always something. Work harder, earn more, finish this task, complete that chore. Why marry someone for who they are, only to try and change them later? Jack, in a moment of frustration, admitted that he had even asked for permission to come to the pub that night. Our once frequent hangouts had dwindled to rare gatherings, barely once every few weeks. When last orders were called, we made a bold declaration. We were going on this trip no matter what. We were men, after all, kings of our castles. If necessary, we would ignore their protests, dodge their texts, and assert our independence. But as the alcohol wore off, reality hit. The backlash was swift: silent treatment, passive-aggressive remarks, and icy stares. Not the worst outcome, we reasoned, but certainly not ideal. Determined not to back down, we stood our ground, supporting each other like a band of rebels, resisting oppression. Then came the twist. During our next scheduled guys' night, our wives dropped an unexpected bombshell. They had plans of their own, a bachelorette party. And that meant we were on babysitting duty. With no choice, we gathered at Rob's house, setting the kids up with movies while making the best of our missed pub night. Everything was fine until 9 p.m., when a message popped up in our group. Chat Claire, Matt's wife. "So are you guys still going on that trip?" Sensing a trap, Matt, ever the bold one, replied with a simple "yes." Then Michelle chimed in. "Well, in that case, maybe we should continue our search for our second husbands." We exchanged confused looks. What was that supposed to mean? A few moments later, a selfie came through from my wife, Helen. The four of them were at a club surrounded by young men. I quickly typed back, "Think carefully about what you're doing." Carol, Jack's wife, shot back, "Trust us, we are." Then, the messages kept coming. Photos and videos of them dancing, laughing, and getting free drinks from strangers. At first, we refused to react. That's what they wanted, after all. But as more messages poured in, we caved and started calling them. Not a single one picked up. Eventually, we sent a group response. "Remember, every action has consequences. Don't do something we'll all regret." I couldn't help myself. I sent Helen a private message. "Hope you found one. You're going to need him." A few seconds later, a video came through. It was the four of them dancing in a tight circle, laughing. But then I noticed something in the background. Some guy had his hands all over Helen. My stomach twisted. This had just escalated into something far more serious. We had to go to the club. But there was one problem. None of us wanted to stay behind, to watch the kids. At first, I considered asking Helen's mom to babysit, but then a better idea hit me. Why not let her handle the situation in a different way? Without hesitation, we copied the pictures, texts, and videos onto our social media accounts, captioning them, "Our devoted wives showing their love." The reaction was instant. Helen's mum was the first to comment, demanding an explanation. No daughter of hers would ever behave so shamelessly. If there was anyone better at nagging than Helen, it was her mother, a true master of relentless criticism. Within moments, family and friends flooded the comments, most of them outraged. Some were furious, others suggested we cut our losses and move on. Jack, to his surprise, even received a direct message from someone offering to comfort him. Meanwhile, Matt sent a quick check-in message in our group chat, but there was no reply. Instead, we noticed the pictures and videos had vanished from the chat. Too late. The damage was already done. I could only imagine their phones ringing non-stop, bombarded by calls from concerned relatives and furious friends. We were still trying to arrange a babysitter so we could storm the club when a message came through from Helen. We're in a cab on our way home. When they arrived, they looked mortified, ashamed, full of apologies, bracing for impact. The moment they walked in, we unleashed a storm of furious questions. Luckily, the kids were too absorbed in their movie to notice. Through nervous explanations, they insisted their antics were nothing more than an attempt to make us jealous. There was flirting, some close dancing, but they swore it hadn't gone beyond that. Helen claimed that the moment the guy touched her inappropriately, she had slapped him. We weren't entirely convinced. Each of us made it clear, if they truly wanted new husbands, all they had to do was say the word. The reaction was immediate, hysterical. Denials, emotional outbursts, and frantic backpedaling. Before we could even process it all, Helen's mother called, utterly horrified, demanding to know if her daughter had lost her mind. Eventually, we relented and took the posts down from social media, though an uneasy tension remained. The one thing we all agreed on? The trip was happening. We needed space, not just to clear our heads, but to figure out if our marriages were even salvageable. As luck would have it, a friend of Rob's had been at the club that night. He recognized our wives and, sensing something off, kept an eye on them. Later, when the social media storm erupted, he reached out to let us know what really happened. According to him, the night had ended when one of the guys got too handsy. One of the wives, presumably Helen, lashed out, causing a scene. After that, they had called it quits, but we saw no reason to share that detail with them. Let them sit with the uncertainty just as we had. The next day, I sat down for a real conversation with Helen. She wasn't pleased that we had aired everything online. She felt humiliated, claiming it made them look cheap. I simply pointed out, "You looked that way because you acted that way." Surprisingly, she didn't argue. Instead, she admitted she deeply regretted the entire night. She realized how petty it all was, fueled by alcohol and a misguided need to prove a point. More importantly, she acknowledged how much her constant demands had affected me, a habit driven by her mother's influence and reinforced by her friends. In the end, she encouraged me to take the trip. And what a trip it was. It rekindled old friendships, reignited our sense of adventure, and reminded us of what we had been missing. The landscapes were breathtaking, the thrill of climbing unmatched. Every muscle ached, but it was a pain that felt earned, proof of hard work and determination. Looking back, we regretted letting things spiral the way they did, but one thing was certain. This was just the first of many trips to come.